Now, the first question is from Wild Homeschool Group in Portsmouth, Virginia. Now, let's see. I know who needs this question. Why was bread not included in the pollinator group of foods we just saw in the first program? And doesn't wheat have to be pollinated?
Wheat does have to be pollinated. If you remember, as Donna talked, there are ways to pollinate by wind, which wheat is wind pollinated. And we're concerned about the pollinators, and that is what we're focused on. But without pollinators, you can still have bread.
Thank you, Alan. Next question, please. Thank you, Gabrielle the Butterfly. Our next question is from the Montessori School of Navarre in Florida. And this question is, when are the best months to plant a pollinator garden? You can raise your hands. The best months for a pollinator garden. Nate?
Well, I usually start in the fall. A lot of times I'll amend the soil. I live in Virginia and I have lots of Virginia clay, so I want to put a lot of humus and mulch and manure in there and maybe some sand to loosen it up. And so it's all ready, so in early spring I can start planting plants. But it's not too early to start planting some plants in the early fall. So spring and fall are good. The dead of summer is not the best time because plants are really under stress with a lot of heat from the sun.
Okay, great. So you're kind of always working on that garden.
Yes.
All right. Next question, please. Thank you, Gabrielle. All right, our next question is from Ms. Rizwan's 7th grade class from McMillan Junior High in Wiley, Texas. So, how did monarchs get their name?
Monarchs get their name from King Billy. When the first settlers came here, William of Orange was known as King Billy. And the settlers saw this big orange butterfly and they decided to call it King Billy, or the monarch. That's how the monarch got its name.
Very interesting.
Very good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
We didn't know that.
No, I know. See, we're all learning. All of us are learning. Great. King Chip. All right, our next question is from Mrs. Gau's class at Mountain View Elementary in Haymarket, Virginia. So, do bees see in black and white? And if so, how would the petals attract them if they can't see the beautiful colors?
So actually bees can see in color, but they see in color a slightly different way than we do as human beings. Bees see colors in terms of ultraviolet light. So a flower that is orange or blue to us will actually look a little different and actually will kind of seem more bright to a bee than it does to us.
Thank you. Yes,
If I
please.
can just interject there, there's some absolutely fascinating experiments that Carl von Frisch, who got a Nobel Prize for animal behavior, did with bees and color. And you can reward bees on one color, and then you can switch it and see how they all fly in and so on. And it's the type of experiment you could do to train bees to one color and then move the reward over and so on. And it's a very, very elegant little book that he wrote on this. It's great.
That's interesting. I would never have thought that you could train bees.
You can train
That's
them.
great.
They're smart.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes from Mrs. Hart's class at St. Joseph School in Ole, Illinois. How do bats get to the pollen in small plants, and how are they attracted since they are blind?
Your bats.
I'm batty, okay. Now, bat flowers are very special flowers. Most of them are white. Most of them have a very open flower. Most of them have a lot of pollen that they present. And the bats do not gather the pollen, but rather the pollen is brushed all over their faces by all of these anthers that are in the flower. And so the bat comes in and sticks its nose in to get the nectar, gets the pollen all over its face, and it goes to another flower. But of course the bat's licking itself all the time, and therefore it gets a little nutrient out of this pollen, but it doesn't actually collect pollen or use pollen. It's mostly the flower design that gets the pollen from place to place on the face of the bats. Now, bats generally do not visit flowers that are not bat adapted. So they don't visit these little small things, which I think was what the question was all about. They visit really special flowers that are designed for bats. It's a coevolution. It's an evolution of the flower and an evolution of the flower feeding bats.
Excellent. I love that. All right. Now, let's have another one. You get to go batty. All right. All right, and this is from the students at Pasvar Homeschool in Arlington, Texas. Is there a color variation between male and female butterflies? Butterflies. Dr.
Very
Pick?
much depends on the species. We have some butterflies we call sexually dimorphic, where the males and the females will be quite different. A lot of the blues, the males are blue and the females are brown. Other species, it's very difficult to tell them apart. They'll look virtually identical. If a brilliant expert would like to add to that.
One of the things that I did early in my career is I worked on the sulphur butterflies. Everybody knows the sulphur butterflies, those little yellow, kind of lemon yellow butterflies that fly around alfalfa fields. Well, there are two species of them. And one of the species is all yellow, and the other species is orange. And the orange species has males that have a UV reflectance pattern. It reflects UV, but we can't see that. The female butterflies can, and it's very important in mating for the female butterfly to see the UV reflectance pattern, the flash of the male butterfly as he's approaching. If the wrong butterfly approaches, doesn't have that flash, no dice.
No luck.
So males always have to be flashing. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. And this is from our third grade class at Christ the King Catholic School in Chicago. This is from Mrs. Sullivan and Mrs. Foreman's classes. Which states in the U.S. have the greatest need for pollinators?
Probably California, what do you think?
So California has almond crops, and once every year, almost all of the honeybee colonies from all over the country go to California to help pollinate almond crops. So California has a very kind of special need, and it's very important agriculturally in general. But all states grow agriculture, and all states have wildflowers that need to be pollinated. So really all of them.
Right.
Thank you. Gabriel? Thank you very much. Go Texas. Mrs. Howard's class from Armstrong Elementary in Sashi, Texas wants to know, what are some of the good plants to put in your schoolyard garden to attract pollinators? Nate?
One of my favorites, and I'll pass the microphone around and everyone can, I think, list their favorites.
That's a good idea.
Are mints. One of the mints I put in my garden last year is Pycnanthemum muticum. It's a mountain mint, and it's actually, it blooms for a very long time, as Donna was saying is important, and there were just many species of bees all over it all summer. So anyone else want to pick their favorite plant?
I like asters, but it's mainly because I have a beautiful painting of an aster and a bee hanging in my living room, but they're still important flowers.
I like sunflowers and Joe Pyeweed, but it's just my preference.
I would go with goldenrods. In the fall, they are the trap. They're a natural trap of everything that's been out there building up their populations. They come to goldenrods at the end of the season, and if you've got a goldenrod patch next to you, they're usually weeds along roadsides or abandoned lots. They are absolutely fantastic place, so I plant goldenrods.
Well, I got two. I got like two. New England aster. New England aster has a big mound like this, and it can be covered, a big plant can be covered with 20 or 30 butterflies on it and a lot of bees and a lot of soldier beetles. But another one I like is something called ageratum, kind of a blue mist ageratum. And we had a patch, maybe about a meter square, in our Monarch Way Station #1 at the University of Kansas, which was a real attractive plant. And it had about 300 different pollinators per square meter when that thing was in full bloom. I mean, it had at least a dozen species of small solitary bees, plus a lot of butterflies. And of course, those soldier beetles, they're everywhere.
Very little else to do in Kansas.
And this kind of relates back to the image that we saw earlier about goldenrods when we were looking at the bee hunt. If we looked in that one little tiny patch, how many pollinators do we see just in that one area? So it does depend on what you plant as to what you're going to attract. We have time for one more question, and This is from Mrs. Harris's class in Nixa, Missouri. Why do you use soapy water? And is it harmful to the bees? Ow.
So we use soapy water, first of all, because it's non-toxic and it's very easy to get soap and water. The soap will actually prevent the bees from crawling out of the bowl. And so when we sample bees, the bees do, unfortunately, will die in the bowl so that we can observe them and study them closer.
Thank you, Sean. And one last question from Conley Elementary in Las Cruces, New Mexico. How do you attract ladybugs to your garden?
I encourage my aphids. I know that's counterintuitive, but I make sure that the aphids stay on my milkweeds, Chip. And once the aphids are there, then the ladybugs come in. But if anybody has any other ideas, I'll pass it on.
Any other ideas out there?
There's certain plants, particularly in the pea family, are very good for growing pea aphids and other aphids and so on. So vetch and peas and so on tend to get a lot of ladybugs on because they're feeding on the aphids again.
Thank you, Dr. Pick.
Don't let them eat those monarch caterpillars.
Those
don't want them to
aphids.
do that.
No, we don't.
Some of the more recent introductions are eating native ladybugs.
All right. Thank you, all of our experts. We really appreciate you answering all these questions today, and that's all the time we have for today.